Welcome to Machine Minds, where technology and humanity meet. I'm your host, Greg Terrusian, founder of Samson Rose, a recruiting and search business focused on the robotics and AI industries. The Machine Minds show is where we dive deep into the intricate world of robotics and artificial intelligence. As a staffing industry leader with a passion for the frontiers of technology, I'm pleased to be bringing you intimate conversations with the founders, investors, and trailblazers who are at the heart of the AI and robotics revolution. In each episode, we dig into their journeys, the applications of the products they're working on, and the breakthroughs that are shaping our future. Join us as we explore how these machine minds are transforming the way we live, work, and understand our world. Whether you're an entrepreneur, a tech enthusiast, or just curious about this amazing field, you'll learn something new with each episode. Let's delve into the extraordinary. Let's delve into machine minds. Hello and welcome to Machine Minds, where technology and humanity meet. I'm your host, Greg Terrusian, founder of Samson Rose, and on today's episode, I'm joined by Davis Foster, the chief engineer and co-founder of Scythe Robotics, who build highly intelligent autonomous robots to tackle challenges in unstructured outdoor areas. Now that's a mouthful. Welcome to the show, Davis.
Thank you, Greg. It's great to be here.
I'm glad you're here. Let's jump into it. So I wanted to start with a bit of background here. If you could share with us your journey into the world of robotics and what inspired you to co-found the company.
Yeah, so I don't want to spend too much time on myself, but I think for me it all kind of like started as a kid playing with Legos, which then eventually sort of you graduate into Lego Mindstorms, graduate from that into competitive robotics in high school, and I was really fortunate to from there get sucked into a garage startup, like a garage stage, like literally working out of the co-founder's basement startup while I was still in high school. Doing assembly work initially, and then slowly transitioning into hardware engineering for them. Brought in a bunch of my really talented software friends from high school to work with me, and it was kind of funny. It was like two co-founders in their early 30s, and then a bunch of 16-year-olds building all their hardware and software. But it was such a cool experience to see that sort of founding process, especially for a hardware startup at such a young age, and that was pretty formative for me. And then me and that same group of friends went on to start our own consumer electronics company, shipped a bunch of hardware, like thousands of units from our dorm room in college.
Wow.
Which is also a pretty fun and interesting experience with lots of ups and downs. But through that process, I spent a lot of time up at 4 a.m. on the phone with China, dealing with manufacturing issues, that sort of stuff, and not at all focusing on school or studying. So I kind of knew that I was on my way out of college after my first year, and sort of stumbled into yet another really good opportunity at a company called Occipital here in Boulder, Colorado, that does really advanced computer vision technology. And that's where I ended up meeting my co-founder, Jack, who we ended up creating Scythe together. But Occipital was this really cool window into the future for us. So it was my first foray into like hard computer vision, and let me see what the world was kind of going to look like, 5-10 years away from what that technology was going to unlock. And that led Jack and I to sort of develop a thesis around Scythe.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I think pretty rare as well, and I'd like to get your perspective and input on that, because a lot of people that I speak to that are in the space, they have an interest early on. I think more so now, people in high school and stuff are getting or dabbling a bit more into robotics, or actually producing hardware, depending on the school that you're in. But how did you actually get that opportunity to join a garage startup at that age and at that stage, right? Like normally it's in college and you're in like competition teams or something like that, or doing internships, but at a high school age, that's pretty rare.
Yeah, honestly, it was a lot of just sort of good luck at the time. My dad's brother's wife's cousin happened to live one town over and was starting a company and needed people to help do assembly. So they made a hardware product, like a just pure mechanical hardware product for point of sale. And this is around the time when Square was just taking off. So it was an iPad point of sale system that could take Square, would lock your iPad in place so people couldn't steal it. And now you see these sort of tablet point of sale systems everywhere. They're the only way to do it.
Right.
But this was at the very beginning of that. So they made this mechanical product. They needed someone to put it together. And then through this sort of long chain, somehow I got connected as like, hey, this is a sort of hardware nerd who definitely can help you put this sort of thing together. And that's how it started. And then very quickly, I think the co-founders realized that we could be leveraged more efficiently than just assembling hardware. And instead, we could be designing stuff for them, which was very symbiotic. It was like a win-win for both of us.
That's so cool. That's so cool. Very unique story. I love that. Then now in the entrepreneurial world, which is really exciting, and you guys have been going for a number of years now, which is unique as well. A lot of startups fail within the first kind of 24 months, and you've obviously bucked that trend. What were some of the initial challenges you guys faced in the nascent stages?
Yeah, I mean, we kind of had all your classic startup challenges, like hiring your first engineers and team in general, fundraising, pitching, obviously as part of that. Then all the hardware startup problems as well, building stuff, needing physical space, having pretty long cycles. So if you make an error anywhere in the process, especially early on where you don't know a lot about exactly how things are going to shake out, it takes a long time to correct them. But I think one particularly fun, or not fun, but painful, honestly, early story for us is we had our first gen machine, our first real mowing machine. We called it Arapaho. So all of our machine code names are based on or named after national parks and forests in an ABCD order. So Arapaho was our first real robot. And we had been mowing all summer here in Colorado, no real problems. Like we had figured out the basics of autonomy, the machine dynamics. It was, doing its job at a sort of primitive level, but effective. And once winter rolled around, we had to move it down to Florida so we could continue testing and learning throughout the full growing season. And that's where a lot of our customers really are. And like basically the second it hit Florida grass, we learned that the robot effectively couldn't operate. It didn't have enough torque to move in like this really spongy Florida St. Augustine grass. It's the grass type they have over there. And here in Colorado, the dirt's pretty hard. It's dry. Not so much in Florida. So we just like sink into it, and then the robot would just not be able to turn at all. And that was kind of like a big epic fail moment for us, where we're like, we put a lot of work into this machine and it's useless in our actual environment.
That's really interesting. Yeah, I guess one of those things you don't think about unless you're in the space. It's a completely different climate, right? You have so much humidity and it's such a wet place. Yeah, it makes sense. Total sense.
Yep, totally different problems.
Yeah, interesting. So, and we were talking offline about Colorado. So you guys headquartered and founded the company there, or did you move it from the Bay Area to Colorado?
Yeah, that's sort of an interesting part of our fundraising journey. We Occipital, the company that Jack and I came out of, is headquartered in Boulder. We were both based here. When we started Scythe, we knew that we needed to build a deeper venture and sort of entrepreneurship network in general than we could get here in Colorado, especially at that point in time. So we effectively moved to San Francisco for about 9 months at the very early stages of the company, right after raising our first round of capital. So we kind of did the roadshow thing, did our first round, and then moved to San Francisco to really build that network deeper, which ultimately ended up being massively helpful. So it was definitely a good move. But since after that initial 9 months, we've been based here in Boulder, Colorado, and we've got satellite offices in Austin, Texas, and Vero Beach, Florida.
That's great. Yeah. So growing steadily, and like we spoke about offline as well, quality of life over there in Boulder is a lot better than some of these other places, these expensive places in the US. So anyone thinking about robotics roles out there, then consider Boulder. So let's talk about the genesis of Scythe Robotics and the vision you guys have. What gap do you see in the market that you are aiming to fill?
Yeah, so maybe a little bit more on the origin story, just real quick before we get too deep into the market need.
Sure.
So yeah, Jack and I were working at this vision company, Occipital. We were doing what we call disembodied computer vision, where it's computer vision running um, for some application like AR, VR, or drones, or 3D scanning for home building or medical or whatever, right? But the the vision is disconnected from the real world. So there's no action taken on the real world. It's purely like, where am I? What does my world look like? And then you can do something with that data later. Um, and both Jack and I wanted to get back to some robotics application where the computer vision you're doing directly and immediately allows you to do something to the real world. It's sort of more compelling and exciting. And we sort of could see where this trajectory, the technology trajectory, was headed, and knew what the opportunities that was going to enable. So the specific markets we started thinking about for this technology were things like construction, agriculture, forestry, landscaping, of course, sort of off-road environments where being able to see and understand the world in real time lets you do way, way, way more than what was previously possible. So sort of taking robots from the kind of thing you put in a cage and you have them follow one script over and over and over again all day, every day, to robots that are sort of dynamically reacting to what's in their environment and handling really messy, ugly scenarios like weather, lighting, obstacles that are sort of unexpected and chaotic. Um, so we started looking at a lot of those markets, and Jack kept coming back to lawn mowing. He had about an acre and a half property outside of Boulder that he had to mow frequently, and he hated it. And he's like, I know robots can be good at this. I'm bad at this. I hate this. And I was kind of resistant to going after mowing at first. It felt like there were more like just sexier and more exciting markets in something like construction or agriculture.
Right.
But the more we talk to customers, and now getting back to your sort of question about the market need, the more we talk to customers, the more we've realized there was a really serious pain point in landscaping around labor. These guys, like, consistently, pretty much every landscaper we talked to said that they are actively turning down new contracts because they don't have the labor to go service the properties.
Wow.
So it had nothing to do with the money. It had nothing to do
Yeah.
with, it's like they have
Just
sort of two
bandwidth.
problems. Exactly.
Mm.
And they sort of have two major problems. There's hiring, which is it's just challenging to get people into that funnel. Landscaping is not a very fun job. You're up at 5 a.m. and then you spend the rest of the day on a mower doing sort of monotonous task in the hot sun all day. And we get interesting feedback. People are like, I kind of like mowing my lawn. It's like, yeah, as a one off on a Sunday, it's a
Right.
little bit therapeutic, but day in and day out, it's pretty tough.
And they probably don't have an acre and a half that they have to maintain themselves.
Exactly. They have hundreds of acres they've got to maintain for other
Yeah.
people.
Right.
So yeah, it's a that was the real pain. And then there obviously are a lot of other opportunities that we can sort of add on to that, like by having an autonomous machine that has advanced sensors on it, navigating around in these properties. There's a lot of data and value we can also surface for these customers that they've just never had access to. Everything from like, where's my crew, and like, how long is it taking them to get these properties done? Like just simple time tracking stuff that's really challenging when you work in sort of a pen and paper business, to more advanced insights that can let them upsell their customers and understand how they can provide a better service, et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, the real market pain is around labor, and about 50% of the work that these commercial landscapers do is lawn mowing. So automating that one slice of it gives them a pretty enormous amount of leverage to grow their business without necessarily needing to hire and retain more people.
Interesting. That's great.
Yeah.
And we, again, spoke a bit about this offline, but if someone was new to the space and just decided to do a bit of research into robotic lawnmowers or ag tech in general, you guys obviously are able to distinguish yourself, and there's a variety of different use cases. How do you position yourself in this competitive landscape, or who are you really mainly? We obviously spoke about you speaking to and selling to people that are doing the work on more of a mass scale, as opposed to like the end consumer. So can we talk a bit about that?
Yeah, that's sort of an interesting one. So on the sort of landscaping space in general, there are kind of three categories. You've got your homeowner sort of category, where there are landscaping tools that are marketed directly to them. You have your residential landscaper. So that's where a homeowner typically will hire a contractor to come in and do their landscaping. So that's, leaf blowing, mowing, obviously, tree trimming, planting some stuff, mulching, aerating, that sort of thing. And then you have commercial landscaping, which is effectively the same thing, but targeting more institutional clients. So think corporate campuses, college campuses, HOAs. So, big bundles of homes that all get mowed at once and often have common spaces, public parks, sometimes golf courses, things like that sort of fall under the commercial landscaping umbrella. And those are our customers specifically. And then in terms of the competitive landscape for the products, you have what we sort of call Roombas for your lawn, which are the robo mowers. Where if you Google robo mower, that'll be what pops up. The most popular ones from Husqvarna, and these are like Roomba sized things. So they weigh maybe 10, 15, 20 pounds max, and they can maintain maybe 3/4 of an acre. But they do it with a boundary wire typically, so like an electric dog fence you put around your yard, and then they sort of bounce around randomly like a Roomba and eventually cut everything to a kind of satisfactory level. So those are really great for a homeowner. If you have a small area of land, they're wonderful, and they're efficient. They're silent, which is all pretty nice. But if you have a bigger space to maintain, they just don't get the job done, and they can't get done with the quality level that's required for commercial landscaping.
Right.
So what we make is a much bigger machine. It's a commercial grade machine, weighs about 1,500 pounds, has a battery to go all day long, because what these commercial landscapers do is, load up a truck, go to the first property of the day, load it up again, go to the second property, up to 10, maybe more times a day. And that's where we play.
Very cool. Yeah, and I was speaking to Jack about it, and you've obviously got the human in the loop element as well, where you can jump on there and maneuver it yourself if and when needed, or get stuck or something like that.
Correct. Yeah. So there's sort of two things there that are interesting. We wanted to make a mower that was immediately familiar to commercial landscapers. And I think that's one good learning that we had early on. If you try to reinvent too much, it's likely going to be rejected by your initial customer base. And that's especially true in an industry like this, where it's very brass tacks focused. Like, I need to get this job done. I don't have any time to spend like futzing around with some newfangled approach to how to do this. So we've tried to make it slot right into their existing operations, look and feel like an existing machine, drive like an existing internal combustion engine machine that they use today, just to make it really comfortable and drop in. So there's sort of that aspect of it, is make it familiar and make it easy to use. And then there's the other side of it, where our autonomy can handle sort of the majority of commercial mowing cases where you're in large, pretty open spaces. But once you get into like really tight little spaces, or the kind of situation where you got to sort of plow through a low-hanging tree branch, our mower's going to be really conservative and safe. It's not going to hit the tree branch, but a human on it is just going to sort of like, squint their eyes and push through it. Exactly.
Yeah.
So those sorts of things. And then loading and unloading from the truck, that sort of application, it's like that is really hard for autonomy to handle, but really easy for a human. So it lets us get the best of both worlds.
Perfect. Thanks for that. All right, let's jump into an area that you are very familiar with as the chief engineer. So your technology and innovation. And let's talk a bit about behind the scenes of the engineering there. So can you dive into some of your core technologies that are powering your mowers?
Sure. I think across the hardware and software stack, we have two sort of very different but very interesting fundamental pieces of technology. So on the software front, I think the major drivers of sort of value for us, the stuff that impacts our ability to get the work done for our customer, is our computer vision stack. Half of that is geometric. So that's more answering the question of, what does the world look like around me, and where am I in that world precisely? And that lets us navigate, create really straight lines and stay on course, which is like a huge selling point to our customers, is that we have superhuman straight lines. So that geometric computer vision, and we pair that with the machine learned computer vision for semantic understanding of the world. So geometric handles, what does the world look like? Where am I? Semantics handles, what am I looking at? And that lets us be really intelligent about safety for humans and animals, giving them a lot of space, stopping very far away if someone's in our way or could be in our way, while still letting us navigate really tightly around trees, telephone poles, park benches, things like that, where the expectation is that we need to cut all the grass and not leave like huge open empty spaces. So that's sort of our vision tech. We also have a lot of motion planning technology, and then a sort of huge amount of just general robot infrastructure below that to let us collect data, track metrics, handle errors, handle issues that come up in the field remotely, to production, everything else. It's kind of like an enormous iceberg of software that goes into building a full stack product like this. And then on the hardware side, in order to complement all of those systems, we've built a ground up machine. And building the hardware and software at once lets us kind of do not exactly the Apple thing, but something sort of like it, where everything kind of just works magically. A lot of our competitors have tried to go a different direction, where they retrofit an existing gas machine and put sensors on it and put it in the field. And there's definitely pros and cons. Like that's a very fast way to get a product out the door, and lets you leverage. The mower manufacturers have already figured out how to make a pretty decent mower. It lets you avoid reinventing the wheel. But we've sort of gone the slow roll approach, where we build the whole system that lets us get the sensor inputs exactly the way we want them. That lets our autonomy get stronger because it's working with better information than we get otherwise. We can integrate the sensors really robustly. That lets us keep them in calibration more effectively, which then improves our ability to use vision as our sort of centerpiece tech. And all of these things sort of flow into each other and make the product much better. But we have an all-electric ground-up machine that lets us be really reliable, since there's so few moving parts as compared to a gas machine, and very little maintenance, which is also a benefit for our business model. That sort of covers the two big categories, and I'm happy to go deeper on them.
Perfect. No, that's awesome. It's refreshing to hear, building it ground up as well, and owning all the parts and having visibility into everything there, and the benefit of that at the end of the day to the customer. Can you talk about pricing with any of this, how it compares to existing mowers or maybe even competitors or anything like that, and what that ROI looks like to the landscapers?
Sure. Yeah. So that's always an interesting question. In particular, because our pricing is still constantly evolving. We're not at a place where we have like a really firm fixed public price. We're constantly, just like we're iterating on the rest of the system, iterating on exactly how we slot into our customers' business as well. And but primarily, our philosophy is that we want to own the machine, and we want to lease or rent it to our customers. And the primary reason for that is that if you sell the machine, you ultimately end up into a race to the bottom on what the cost of the machine is, which is where all the other mower manufacturers in the industry have found themselves today, where every single mower, if you paint it all black, looks the same. Even the most experienced landscaper couldn't tell the difference between a John Deere and a Toro if you painted it black and put them 30 feet away. And it's just because they're all cost optimized to get pennies out of the system everywhere they can. And the trade that they're making there is minimize the upfront cost to the landscaper so that they buy your mower. And when sort of the cost optimized product inevitably breaks and fails in a lot of pretty predictable ways, the dealer gets to either sell them a new machine or make service revenue on the repair. So for the manufacturer, that's a win. For the customer, that's a pretty big loss. And the reliability of mowers is, if you can think about the reliability of a modern car, they're quite good. Reliability of a modern mower is not. They're pretty unreliable. They need oil changes like on a bi-weekly basis. It's kind of crazy stuff.
Wow.
If you want to make them last, you really have to do that frequently. We have customers who get 1,000 hours on a mower, which is not very much, and are like, I'm getting rid of this because it's entering that age where it's going to start failing catastrophically. And I'd rather sell it now. Yeah. 3,000 hours is basically like the highest we hear from people before they're like, oh yeah, it's got a new engine or it's been fully overhauled.
Okay.
Yeah, it's
Real
like
problem.
exactly. So not only is there sort of the environmental issues associated with burning gas, not having catalytic converter, not having any advanced emission control technology, but then you sort of layer on the fact that they're so unreliable that they're constantly being scrapped, basically. Um, so you're kind of losing a lot there. So from a tech perspective, we didn't want to build on top of that platform, right? It's like we'd inherit all their unreliability and then add more with new sensors and expensive sensors that have been retrofit on. But from a business model perspective, by renting or leasing the equipment and being responsible for the maintenance of that equipment ourselves, we align our incentives and our customers' incentives really tightly. And they really appreciate that once they sort of think through the dynamics here.
Sure.
But we lose if the machine breaks. Like we have to go repair it. We have to pay for those repairs, and we lose. The robot stops mowing, right? So we're not making money, and our customer also feels that pain. So both of us have the same incentive to make a really reliable, bomb-proof machine and spend more on the little pieces that let us get that reliability. So we can choose the fancy $15 bearing instead of needing to try to use the $1 bearing that we know is going to fail, but saves us $14.
That's great. That's great.
Yeah.
That's normally the main hurdle as well for people adopting robotics, especially for the first time in their industry or in their business. It's the cost, right? That upfront capex that people like, and then the unknown. Like you said, if it's too different to what they're used to, do they really want to learn something new? Are they going to deal with that cost as well? And then what if it doesn't work and it just sits there? But like you said, if your incentives are aligned and you're going to be, if they have to either hire more people to do the job or bring in this piece of equipment and pay it in a similar sort of way, makes a ton of sense. That's
exactly.
Great.
Yeah. So to them, our pricing looks a lot more like OpEx. It's what they're used to paying. They don't have big capital outlays. And, they only make money when they mow. We only make money when we mow. And that alignment is awesome.
That's great. Love that. Now, obviously, AI is a big buzzword these days, and some people are going to stumble on this podcast and just from searching AI and only know about LLMs, for example. But can we just touch on, there's obviously tons of different types of AI and how that specifically contributes to the capabilities of your product and how you're using it for your mowers?
Sure. So we don't have a lot of direct uses for LLMs or sort of the modern like buzzword AI today. I think we see a lot of potential for it going forward. So I'm sure there's ways that we're going to use LLMs to enable natural language interaction with a robot, maybe, or more advanced path planning that somehow leverages some of these innovations, or even things like the robot just being able to get itself out of situations more intelligently. So I think there's a lot of interesting things we're going to do there over the next 2 to 5 years. But immediately, most of our AI sort of machine learning technology is centered around computer vision. So what am I looking at on a per pixel basis? So everything in my image, is that a person? Is that a tree? Is that grass? Is that whatever? And then how does that unlock the way the robot behaves around those things, and how we navigate the world intelligently? And then also the back end stuff that goes into that, like how do we select our training data? So a lot of those sort of back end pipelines that people don't think about are ML as well. Like what is going to make our model better? What data do we need to select and label to improve our model? And then how do we make simulators that more accurately represent the real world and have accurate visuals? And a lot of that is ML driven.
Great. So let's move on to some of like the growth and business strategy stuff. We obviously touched a little bit on pricing models and things like that, but and your big aha moment of not being able to mow in Florida, which is definitely a big thing. Can you just share or discuss any recent like achievements or product changes or partnerships, anything like that has been significant for you guys, or anything that you're targeting in the next sort of 12, 24 months?
Yeah. It's an interesting question. A handful of things.
Oh, great.
We don't have any like major new big announcements. The sort of big stuff that we have from recent memory is that we're now past, I want to say, 7,500 reservations for mowers from many customers across the U.S. and that represents years of demand for us. So we're pretty much in a supply constrained environment where we need to slowly ramp up our production to make sure we get things right along the way to meet that demand. So that's an exciting place to be. One of the sort of big milestones that came out of that was our Series B that we closed last year. I'd say that's probably the biggest recent milestone. But what I'm really excited about now is our latest generation machines. That first machine that I talked about in Florida that couldn't do anything, that was the A revision Arapahoe. We are now about to release the E revision Eldorado. And this one is kind of a step function improvement for us. We previously made 25 of its predecessor Denali, deployed those to customers across the country now, which is pretty cool. Everywhere from Florida, Texas, Ohio, South Carolina, etc. But Eldorado represents just a sort of a step function improvement in the robustness of the machine, the reliability of the machine, its ease of assembly and service, which makes everything sort of flow way better, allows us scale. And these are about to hit. They are in the wild today on a trial basis, but they're about to hit customer hands this coming spring. So I think that's the big milestone we're excited about.
That's exciting. That is very exciting. So you spoke a bit about when you started the company, being in the Bay Area, doing your roadshow, raising some capital, etc. These days, after closing your Series B, I'm sure you still have a lot of relationships there. But how do you guys approach fundraising and investor engagement and stuff like that at this stage?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'd say we absolutely maintain really deep relationships with the investors that are on our cap table that are already involved in Scythe, as well as a lot of those who passed on us in the past because we didn't have the metrics they wanted to see, or we weren't at a mature enough stage for their fund, or whatever it might have been. So I think maintaining those relationships has been critical. I think another major thing is identifying investors whose values and also theses align with ours, which is a surprisingly hard thing to do. But once you do it, it's pretty quick to understand who's just certainly going to pass if you try to pitch them versus who will probably lean in and at least take a serious look at the deal, just purely based on sort of what their vision is and what their values are. And then I think at a higher level perspective, one thing that we've done, one thing that we've balanced really well is having a really clear and intense level of focus on our immediate objectives. Like, we need to unlock these things, get this many robots in the field for this specific application using this subset of our ultimate feature set to customers, while still having still maintaining and articulating a clear big picture vision about where we see the world, 10, 15 years from now, and all of the things that we're going to be able to unlock. And I think walking that tightrope is often really hard, and people sort of lean so far into the big picture vision that they get distracted about the near term. And by doing both, I think we've been able to, just get the hype going on the VC side, while also actually executing and being effective at the immediate task ahead of us.
Perfect. Yeah, it's a balancing act for sure, especially if you've recently raised and in the hardware space, right? It's so capital intensive. So you've always got to be thinking about your next round, or if you want to scale up, right, your production or your team, then that's going to be like shorten your runway. So you've kind of got to have it in the back of your mind. What's your approach? Again, we spoke about this offline a little bit, talent acquisition, and I would do myself a disservice if I didn't ask about that, right? Let's talk a bit about how you're hiring. Being in Boulder, we talked about the talent pool and stuff like that, but what's your approach to hiring or attracting talent and ensuring you guys have the right people on board to hit these goals?
Yeah, I feel like we don't really have a singular approach, and that's one really interesting thing about building a robotics company like ours, is that we have sort of wildly different slices of talent that we're trying to bring on board. So everything from really hard tech computer vision engineers or machine learning engineers, to hardware engineers, to fleet service technicians, sales, obviously, manufacturing engineering, manufacturing operators and technicians on the line, customer success, customer service, like kind of this really wide gamut that you don't see at most companies. And each of them we found needs a pretty different strategy in terms of where you can source these people from, how you appeal to them, where they get their information from. So I'd say it's a non-monolithic solution, but we have got a pretty good blend of hiring locally in Colorado, especially for hardware roles. We find that there is really great hardware talent in Colorado, a lot born out of a lot of the aerospace companies that are here, which have kind of just like driven that flywheel in the past, and then now there's a self-sustaining hardware startup ecosystem in particular that's pretty strong. And manufacturing, sort of same story there. What's been the most challenging is software hires, and that's where we've really leaned into being sort of a hybrid remote company and going after the best talent wherever it exists. If we can convince those people to move to Boulder and work with us in person, that's awesome. If not, then we can still collaborate remotely and get stuff done.
That's great. And definitely going to open up a lot of talent for you if you're open to that, because there's a lot of companies that are just pushing people to be back on site full time or local. So that's good to hear.
It's definitely one of those things where we've kind of realized that if people are going to be remote, we need to have them get time hands-on with the robot pretty frequently. So that's sort of a stipulation of that remote experience, is that at least once every couple of months you kind of got to come out and spend some time on the robots to really like viscerally understand what your code is doing and how it's making things better or worse. But yeah, it's definitely played well for us. And then in terms of sort of acquiring that talent, I think we've done some amount of thought leadership, some stuff like this, where we're just sort of talking about what we're doing, what we see in the industry, getting our name out there, as well as showing up at conferences like IROS, ICRA, other sort of robotics oriented trade shows, things like that. Landscaping oriented trade shows has been a great place for us to find people to do customer service, to work in the fields on our machine as technicians, etc.
Great stuff. And how do you, in terms of your culture, how do you cultivate that to keep innovation flowing, or to encourage new perspectives, new tech, research, whatever it is, from your team?
Yeah, it's another sort of challenging balance striking activity for us, where we need to stay laser focused on shipping the product and not getting sidetracked on the sort of unlimited amount of good ideas that our team generates. We've got a Slack channel called Crazy Ideas, where people are just constantly throwing in like, what if we put a drone in the sky to do some sort of forward observation for us, or pre-mapping for us or something. And there's so much stuff like that is really interesting and could be really compelling for us in the future, but obviously just is not necessarily worth the investment today. Sometimes less obviously than that one. But I think culturally we just have cultivated a team that understands how to make those trade-offs intuitively, and that is really focused on delivering immediate value, but taking some risks strategically where it makes sense, where like the ROI just could be enormous, and it would be foolish for us to not explore some new machine learning technique or some new processor that'll let us run faster.
That's great. Okay, perfect. Before we end, I really want to get your perspective on what some of the most exciting trends are in robotics and AI right now, and if there's any like industry developments that you think are going to significantly impact you guys, or just the space in general in the near future.
Yeah, I think it kind of goes without saying that LLMs and generative AI, I think we have not even like touched the tip of the iceberg on what that's ultimately going to unlock. A lot of it's non-obvious for us, but I think it will come in time. And especially as sort of technologies get built underneath those, or building off of those that are more directly applicable to what we're doing. Obviously, like language and robotics, unless it's communicating in some way, don't obviously fit together. But there will be ways that those get plugged in. So I think that's a really exciting area of development. I think by far the biggest thing that's coming for our industry, or kind of already is here, is trickle down in sensors and compute from both cell phones, which is like the more historical one, but now more recently self-driving cars, or some level 2, 3, 4 ADAS. So just sort of much higher quality and lower cost vision cameras, LiDAR, potentially radar, certainly, all of that improving in quality sort of at a pretty radical rate, and decreasing in cost as well. And that unlocks so much. And same with like onboard compute, just getting denser and faster, and containing more accelerators to do things like real-time ML. I think those are probably going to be the sort of fundamental unlockers of cheaper and cheaper and better robots over the next decade.
Yeah, and it's coming quickly. It's happening now, right?
Very, very quickly. It's really cool to see what other people are doing in the industry outside of us. It's there's so much cool tech that's happening way faster than I think people anticipated to arrive.
Yeah, I know. I see like every week there's just something new that kind of blows my mind, and just thinking like, wow, I mean, 8 months ago, I wouldn't have even thought this was possible. And then now they're like, oh, we're going to scale this, and it's going to be out there, and you can, interact with it soon. That's why I love going to these conferences. You meet so many cool people and see so much cool tech.
Yeah.
Well, look, thank you so much for your time, Davis. This has been awesome. I know we've gone a little bit over here, but I really appreciate all of your insights and you sharing everything about the company. Can you tell people where they can find out more about you, or where they can keep a lookout for what you guys are doing?
Yeah, so company's called Scythe Robotics. We build autonomous lawnmowers for commercial landscaping, if that wasn't already clear. And you can find us at scytherobotics.com or Scythe Robotics on all the social media platforms.
Perfect. And keep a lookout for them at any of the conferences you guys might be going to. And I will hopefully be keeping in touch with you guys, and maybe get you back on here as we hear about more releases of your mowers.
Please do. Yeah, we're really excited about this new gen going out into the field, and I'm sure we'll have lots of war stories to tell after we get it deployed at scale.
I bet. Well, thank you again.
Cool. Thank you. Really appreciate it.